The night was colder than usual when Isaac returned to the family mansion. The large stone house stood on the edge of a lonely hill, surrounded by forests that whispered with the wind. It had been years since he last came here, years since his parents' deaths. Now, with his brothers Thomas, Jacob, Max, and James living in different towns, Isaac had come alone to look after the old place. Behind the mansion, deep in the fog, stood a massive oak tree. It was dark, twisted, and frighteningly tall. Its branches reached out like arms, and its roots curled out of the ground like black veins. Isaac remembered that as children, they were always told to stay away from that tree. Their mother used to say, "The tree remembers the voices of the dead." He thought it was just a story meant to scare them, but even now, the thought of it made his skin crawl. The first night back, Isaac could not sleep. The house creaked with every gust of wind. Old portraits watched him from the walls, and the air smelled of dust and forgotten years. Around midnight, he got up to close the window, but when he looked outside, he saw the tree moving. Not in the wind, but in a slow, unnatural sway, like it was breathing. He stared for a long moment, then told himself it was only the breeze. But then, just as he turned away, he heard something faint, a whisper so soft he almost thought he imagined it. Isaac, his name. It came from outside. He froze, his heart pounding. The sound seemed to come from the direction of the tree. He opened the window a little wider and listened, but the night was quiet again, no wind, no sound, nothing. Only the tree stood there, dark and still. He closed the window quickly and sat on his bed, trying to calm himself. He told himself it was only his mind playing tricks, maybe the sound of the wind, or the echo of old memories. But the unease stayed. By morning, Isaac tried to shake off the fear. He went outside to check the property. The grass behind the mansion was damp with mist, and the ground near the oak tree looked freshly disturbed, as if something had been buried or dug up. The air there felt heavy, colder than the rest of the garden. When he got closer, he noticed something strange, deep scratches on the bark, almost like letters. He leaned in and brushed the moss away. His breath caught in his throat. There, carved deep into the wood, was his name. Isaac. The letters were old, rough, and dry, but the bark around them was darker, as if burned. Isaac stepped back quickly, his mind racing. Who would carve his name into this tree? It wasn't possible. He had never done it, and no one else had been here in years. The wind picked up again, and for a second, he thought he heard laughter, faint, low, and cruel. It came from behind the tree, from the shadows. He turned sharply, scanning the area, but saw nothing. He hurried back inside, locking the door behind him. His hands were trembling. He poured himself a glass of water and tried to think logically. Maybe it was an old prank from childhood, something he'd forgotten. But deep down, he knew the carving hadn't been there before. He would have remembered. That night, Isaac tried not to look out the window. He sat by the fire, reading an old book, pretending the house wasn't filled with strange noises, the soft creak of floorboards, the faint knock on the walls, the sigh of the wind through the chimney. Midnight came again, and he could feel the pull. Something outside wanted him to come. At first, he ignored it, but then it whispered again. Isaac, come closer. His blood ran cold. The voice was clearer this time, soft but unmistakable, and it came from the direction of the tree. He stood up slowly, his heart pounding in his ears. The air in the room grew colder, the fire dimmed. It was as if the whole house was holding its breath. He walked to the window and looked out. The fog had thickened, wrapping the tree in a ghostly glow. Its branches moved slowly, reaching toward the house. And then, he saw something, a shadow standing beneath the tree. It wasn't human, not exactly. It was tall and thin, with glowing eyes that shimmered faintly in the dark. It didn't move, it just watched. Isaac stumbled back, fear gripping him. He blinked and the figure was gone. The tree stood still again. He slammed the curtains shut, his breath ragged. Every instinct in his body screamed for him to leave, but he couldn't. Something about that whisper, that tree, was calling him, not to harm him, but to show him something. He didn't know it yet, but this was only the beginning. The whisper had found him, and it would not stop until he listened. The next morning was gray and silent. The mansion seemed even colder than before. Isaac barely slept that night, haunted by the sound of his name echoing through his dreams. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the oak tree, its bark shifting like skin, its branches reaching out toward him. When he finally gathered the courage to step outside, the fog was still heavy, clinging to the air like smoke. He made his way back to the backyard, his boots crunching on the frosty grass. The massive tree loomed ahead, its dark outlines stretching into the mist. Isaac stood still for a moment, staring at the spot where he had seen the carving the night before. His stomach tightened as he walked closer. There it was, the name Isaac, carved deep into the bark. But now it looked different, fresh. The edges were wet and dark, as though the wood itself was bleeding. He reached out to touch it. The bark was damp and warm, almost like skin. A chill ran through him. As his fingers brushed the carved letters, he felt a vibration, a soft hum that grew louder in his ears. And then, just for a second, he heard it again. A whisper. "You remember me, don't you?" Isaac stumbled back, his breath catching in his throat. The voice was soft, almost kind, but it chilled him to the bone. He looked around the yard, but there was no one there. Only the tree stood in silence, its shadow long and cold. He ran back into the house and locked the back door. His heart raced as he leaned against the wall, trying to make sense of what just happened. Was he losing his mind? Maybe it was the loneliness. Maybe it was the isolation of this old place that made him hear things. But something inside him whispered otherwise, that this was real. Later that day, Isaac decided to call his brother Thomas. He needed to talk to someone, to hear another voice. The phone rang and rang, but no one answered. Finally, Thomas picked up, sounding tired and distracted. "Isaac? You're back at the mansion." "Yeah," Isaac said, his voice trembling slightly. "Listen, something strange happened." "Strange how?" "There's a tree behind the house. You remember it?" Thomas paused. "The one Mom told us to stay away from?" "Yeah, that one. My name's carved into it." Silence. Then Thomas laughed nervously. "Maybe you carved it when we were kids." Isaac shook his head. "No, it wasn't there before. And it's fresh. It looks like it was done last night." "Isaac, maybe you should leave that place alone for a while," Thomas said quietly. "That house, there's a reason none of us went back." Before Isaac could ask what he meant, the line cut off. Static filled the phone. Then, faintly through the noise, he heard it again, his name, whispered softly, like someone standing right beside him. "Isaac." He dropped the phone. It hit the floor and went dead. The whisper stopped. Isaac backed away slowly, his pulse pounding in his ears. He turned toward the window and froze. From the glass, he could see the oak tree and someone standing beneath it. A shape, dark and still, half hidden in fog. He blinked, and the shape was gone. He spent the rest of the day pacing through the house, checking doors, locking windows, convincing himself it was all in his imagination. But as night fell again, he couldn't ignore the pull. Something about that tree, it felt alive, aware, and it wanted him to come closer. At midnight, the whisper started again, softer this time, more desperate. "Isaac, come to me." He tried to block it out, covering his ears, but it didn't stop. The sound was not coming from outside anymore. It was inside his head. He grabbed a flashlight and forced himself to step outside. The wind was cold and sharp, the air filled with mist. He walked slowly toward the tree, his heart thudding with every step. The ground beneath him felt uneven, soft, like freshly turned soil. When he reached the tree, the whisper stopped. Everything went silent. Then a drop of something hit his hand. He looked up and froze. From the branches above, a thick red liquid was dripping down. Blood. It ran along the bark, down through the carved letters of his name, making them shine wet in the moonlight. Isaac stumbled back, dropping the flashlight. The beam rolled across the grass, illuminating something else at the base of the tree, something half buried. It was a small wooden box, old and cracked. He hesitated, but the whisper returned, urging him softly. "Open it." Against his better judgment, Isaac knelt and dug it out. The soil was cold and damp. When he lifted the lid, his stomach turned. Inside the box lay a faded photograph of him as a child, standing under that same tree, smiling. Beside him stood another figure, tall, shadowy, faceless. He dropped the photo, his breath shallow. He had no memory of this picture. None. Suddenly, the ground beneath him trembled, and the tree let out a low groan, like the sound of wood cracking under immense pressure. The whisper grew louder, no longer a single voice, but many. Countless voices, whispering, crying, chanting his name over and over again. Isaac screamed and ran back to the mansion, slamming the door shut behind him. He pressed his back against it, gasping for breath. Through the window, he saw the tree standing tall and silent again, but now there was something different. A second name was carved beneath his, Thomas. Morning came slowly, with a pale gray light spilling through the dusty curtains of the mansion. Isaac hadn't slept. He sat on the floor, staring at the front door, afraid to look outside again. The image of the tree bleeding, the whispering voices, and that box with his childhood photo wouldn't leave his mind. But what haunted him most was what he saw last, the new carving under his name, Thomas. His hands shook as he poured himself a cup of coffee. The silence in the house was too heavy, almost suffocating. Even the ticking of the old grandfather clock in the hall sounded unnatural, echoing through the empty rooms like a heartbeat. He tried calling Thomas again, but his phone only gave a flat, dead tone. By noon, Isaac forced himself to look outside. The fog had lifted slightly. The oak tree stood still in the sunlight, looking harmless, ordinary, even. Maybe it was all just his mind playing tricks on him. Maybe the stress and the loneliness were making him see things that weren't there. But the thought of his brother's name on that bark made him feel sick. He decided to check again. He needed to be sure. He stepped out carefully, every sound of his boots crunching on the dry grass echoing around him. The air was cold and smelled like damp wood. As he approached the tree, his chest tightened. The carvings were there, his name, and below it, Thomas, both dark and fresh, the bark around them split open like wounds. "Thomas," he whispered under his breath. Suddenly, his phone buzzed in his pocket. The screen flickered, showing Thomas's name. Isaac's heart leapt, and he answered quickly. "Thomas." Thank God. But no voice came from the other side. Only a faint sound, like breathing. "Thomas? Can you hear me?" Isaac asked, his voice trembling. Then the breathing grew louder, slow, heavy, and wrong. It wasn't Thomas. Someone or something else was on the line. "Isaac." The whisper came through the speaker, stretching his name in that same eerie tone. Isaac dropped the phone. It hit the ground with a dull thud. The call ended. When he bent to pick it up, he noticed something strange near the roots of the tree. Footprints. Bare footprints. They led away from the tree and toward the woods. Isaac hesitated for a long moment before following them. The deeper he went, the darker it got. The forest seemed to close in around him, the air thick with mist. The whispering started again, faint but everywhere, echoing between the trees. "You shouldn't have come back. Why did you leave us, Isaac? Do you remember what happened here?" He spun around, shining his flashlight through the fog, but there was no one. The voices sounded like they came from all directions, some male, some female, some old, some children. His skin crawled. Finally, the trail ended at a small clearing. In the center stood a stone half buried, covered in moss. Isaac brushed the dirt away and saw words carved into it. His breath caught. It was a gravestone. Thomas Whitmore, 1989 to 2002. He froze. It didn't make sense. His brother was alive. He had just spoken to him days ago. Isaac stepped back, his legs shaking. The earth around the grave shifted, cracking softly, as if something below was moving. He stumbled away, tripping over a root, landing hard on the ground. For a moment, he lay there, gasping for breath. Then, something cold brushed against his arm, a hand. He looked to his side, and his scream echoed through the forest. A pale, dirt-covered arm was reaching out from the soil beside the gravestone. Its fingers twitched, clawing at the earth, trying to pull something up. Isaac scrambled backward as a head began to emerge, a face covered in mud and blood, eyes closed. It looked like Thomas. Isaac ran, crashing through branches and roots, not daring to look back. He burst through the trees and sprinted toward the mansion, slamming the door behind him. His heart pounded in his chest. He locked every door and window he could find. Then he leaned against the wall, shaking, trying to make sense of what he saw. It couldn't be real. It couldn't. Thomas was alive. That grave, that hand, it was impossible. But deep inside, Isaac knew something had changed. The tree wasn't just whispering now. It was waking things that should have stayed buried. His phone buzzed again. With trembling hands, he picked it up. It was another message from Thomas. The text read, "Don't come looking for me." Then, before Isaac could respond, another message appeared, one that made his blood run cold. "I'm already here." A loud thump echoed from the back door. Isaac turned, every muscle in his body tense. The sound came again, slow, heavy knocks. Thump, thump, thump. He stepped closer, his breath shallow. The knocking stopped. Then, from the other side of the door, came a soft whisper, the same one he had heard before. "Isaac, open the door." He froze. The voice wasn't just similar to his brother's, it was his brother's. But something was wrong in it. It was colder, hollow, stretched into something not human. Isaac backed away slowly, whispering, "No, you're not him." The voice grew louder. "Let me in, Isaac." Then the door handle turned slowly on its own. Isaac grabbed a chair and jammed it under the handle, his heart hammering in his chest. The house filled with the sound of scratching, fingernails dragging against the wood, and a low, inhuman growl rising behind the door. He ran upstairs, clutching his phone. He hid in his room, locking the door, trying to stay silent. But the whisper followed. It came from the walls, from the floor, even from inside his head. And when he finally dared to look out the window, he saw it, the oak tree glowing faintly in the darkness. On its bark, beneath his name and Thomas's, a third name was slowly appearing. Jacob. The sun never truly rose the next morning. The sky remained heavy with clouds, and a gray mist hung over the mansion like a shroud. Isaac sat on the edge of his bed, staring blankly at his phone screen. The last message from Thomas still glowed faintly. "I'm already here." He hadn't slept, not even for a second. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that hand crawling from the dirt, and the face that looked like his brother's, half rotten, half alive. Now, as dawn struggled through the fog, Isaac forced himself to move. The mansion was silent, except for the faint ticking of the grandfather clock downstairs. The sound was steady but unnatural, too slow, like it was counting something other than time. He decided to check the backyard again. Every instinct told him not to go, but he needed to see if what he saw last night was real, if the third name was truly there. He stepped outside. The cold morning air hit him instantly, filling his lungs with a damp chill. The grass was wet with dew, and the fog wrapped around everything like a ghostly blanket. The tree stood tall, its branches motionless against the pale light. Isaac walked closer, every step heavier than the last. When he reached the tree, his stomach turned. His name and Thomas's were there, and beneath them, freshly carved, was another. Jacob. He took a step back, whispering, No, that's not possible." As he stared, the ground beneath the tree shifted slightly, as though something was moving under the roots. The soil cracked, and a faint sound, like a heartbeat, echoed through the air. Isaac stumbled back, tripping over a rock. He ran inside, slamming the door shut. His hands were trembling so badly that he could barely hold his phone. He needed to warn Jacob before it was too late. He dialed his brother's number. After several rings, Jacob answered, his voice groggy. "Isaac? It's early, man. What's going on?" "Jacob, listen to me carefully," Isaac said, his voice shaking. "You need to stay away from the mansion. Don't come here. Don't even drive near the woods. What? Why? There's something wrong here. The tree behind the house. The old oak. Jacob interrupted, laughing softly. You're still scared of that thing? We used to climb it when we were kids. Jacob, I'm serious, Isaac snapped. Your name is carved on it. I didn't do it. It's just there. And something's happening. Jacob went silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his tone had changed. Isaac, did you say my name is on the tree? Yes. A pause. Then Jacob whispered, I had a dream last night. I saw that tree. It was burning, and there was something under it, something screaming. Before Isaac could reply, the call cut out. Static filled the line, followed by the faint sound of whispering. His blood went cold. Isaac, the voice said. He's coming home. The line went dead. Isaac's breathing quickened. He grabbed his coat and ran outside to his car, desperate to drive into town and find Jacob. But when he opened the garage, his car was gone. The tire tracks led straight into the fog. No, Isaac whispered. No, no, no. He followed the tracks on foot, his flashlight cutting through the mist. After a few minutes, he heard it, the distant hum of an engine. A faint glow appeared ahead on the road. Jacob's car. It was parked by the forest edge, door open, engines still running. Jacob? Isaac shouted. His voice echoed through the trees, but no one answered. He walked closer, and the smell hit him, damp soil and decay. The driver's seat was empty, but the ground nearby was disturbed, muddy, as if someone had been dragged into the woods. The whisper came again, soft but clear. Isaac, come see what he found. He turned toward the sound and saw faint footprints leading into the trees. He followed them, his flashlight trembling in his hand. The path twisted deeper until he reached a familiar clearing, the one with the gravestone. The grave that once had Thomas's name now had another beside it. The soil there was freshly dug, dark and wet. And on the new stone, Isaac read the name. Jacob Whitmore, 1992 to 2025. The date was today. Isaac fell to his knees, shaking his head. No, no, he's alive. He was just. A faint movement caught his eye. Behind the gravestone, the ground began to rise. The earth bulged, cracked open, and a pale hand reached out. Mud poured from its fingers as it clawed at the ground, pulling itself free. Isaac stumbled back, screaming as a figure emerged. Jacob. His brother's face was pale, his eyes hollow and dark. He opened his mouth to speak, but when he did, soil spilled out instead of words. Isaac stepped back, tears blurring his vision. Jacob, what happened to you? His brother tilted his head, his voice echoing like a whisper carried by the wind. You shouldn't have come back, Isaac. The tree remembers. And then, the voice changed deeper, layered with others, hundreds of whispers speaking at once. It remembers all of you. Jacob's body twisted unnaturally, his limbs cracking like dry wood. His eyes rolled white, and he lunged forward with a shriek. Isaac ran, stumbling through the fog, crashing into branches until he saw the mansion lights again. He burst through the door and slammed it shut, chest heaving. He locked every door and window, but the whisper didn't stop. It was inside the walls now, crawling through the cracks, speaking his name over and over. He sank to the floor, his head in his hands, whispering, "Please, stop." But the voices only grew louder. And when he finally dared to look out the window, he saw the tree again. The bark glowed faintly, and new letters began to carve themselves into the wood. This time, Isaac didn't need to read it to know whose name was next. Max. The mansion felt different that night. The walls seemed to breathe slow, rhythmic, like the house itself was alive. Isaac sat in the corner of the living room, clutching a fire poker from the fireplace. His clothes were soaked from the rain outside, and his mind spun endlessly around the same thought: Jacob is gone. The storm outside had not stopped since he escaped the woods. Thunder cracked across the sky, and the wind howled through the old windows. But louder than all of it was the whisper. It was no longer coming from the tree, it was inside the house. Isaac, come outside. See what we've grown for you. He pressed his palms to his ears, trying to block it out. But no matter how tightly he closed them, the whispers slipped through, soft and cold as breath on his neck. Isaac stood and began pacing. It's just the wind, he told himself. Just the wind. The storm's making me hear things. But then came the knock. 3 soft, deliberate knocks on the back door. Isaac froze. Slowly, he turned toward the kitchen. The sound came again, louder this time. 3 knocks, then silence. He gripped the fire poker tighter and took a shaky step forward. The wind rattled the glass panes as he reached for the curtain. With trembling fingers, he pulled it back, and his heart nearly stopped. A man was standing on the porch. He was soaked from the rain, his dark coat dripping water onto the wooden steps. His head was bowed, but Isaac could see enough to recognize him. It was Max, his best friend. Isaac's voice cracked. Max, what are you doing here? Max didn't answer. He just stood there, unmoving, head still low. Isaac hesitated, then slowly unlocked the door and pulled it open. Rain and cold air rushed in instantly. Max, Isaac said again, stepping closer. You shouldn't be here. Something's happening. You have to leave. Finally, Max lifted his head. His face was pale, his eyes dark and sunken, but there was something else, something off. His pupils seemed too wide, too empty. I couldn't leave you, Max said quietly. You called me. Isaac blinked. What are you talking about? I didn't. But before he could finish, a low creak came from the tree outside. Through the fog, Isaac saw it, the massive oak, swaying though there was no wind. The branches moved slowly, deliberately, almost like arms reaching toward them. And on its trunk, a faint glow. New letters carving themselves. Max stepped forward, rain dripping from his chin. I heard my name, he whispered. It kept saying it over and over until I drove here. I tried not to, but it wouldn't stop. Isaac's stomach dropped. He looked past Max to the tree again, and there it was, freshly carved, shining faintly in the stormlight. Max Carter. Isaac's throat tightened. No, oh God, no. Max turned his gaze toward the tree, then looked back at Isaac with tears in his eyes. What does it mean? Before Isaac could answer, the ground trembled. The tree roots began to twist under the wet soil, breaking through the ground like snakes. They slithered toward the porch, crawling up the steps, wrapping around the posts. Inside. No! Isaac shouted, pulling Max into the kitchen and slamming the door. The roots struck the wooden frame, cracking it like glass. Isaac dragged a table against the door as another root punched through the floorboards. The lights flickered. The whispers grew louder, dozens of voices speaking in unison, all calling Max's name. Max dropped to his knees, clutching his head. It's in my head, he screamed. Make it stop. Isaac knelt beside him, grabbing his shoulders. Listen to me. You have to fight it. Don't listen. But Max's body began to convulse. His veins turned dark beneath his skin, spreading like black vines. His eyes rolled back, and a voice came out of his mouth that wasn't his own. He belongs to the roots. The floor beneath them split open. A massive root shot up, wrapping around Max's leg, pulling him down with terrifying force. Isaac tried to grab him, but the wood splintered under the pressure. Isaac! Max screamed, reaching out, eyes wide with horror. Isaac held on with all his strength, his fingers slipping in the mud and rainwater. I won't let go. But the root tightened its grip and yanked hard. Max's hand slipped from Isaac's and he was pulled into the floor, vanishing into the darkness below. The crack sealed itself shut. The whispers stopped. Isaac fell to the floor, covered in mud and shaking uncontrollably. No, he whispered. No, no, no. He crawled toward the window, heart hammering in his chest. Outside, the tree stood tall and still once again. Only one thing had changed, the carvings. His name, Thomas's, Jacob's, and now Max's, all glowing faintly in the rain. Isaac pressed his forehead against the cold glass, tears falling freely now. What do you want from me? He whispered. The answer came instantly, not from the tree, but from deep inside the walls, like the house itself was speaking. You planted us. Isaac froze. What? What do you mean? The voice came again, now louder. echoing through the pipes, the ceiling, the floors. You buried us. You made us grow. His hands went numb. Memories flashed through his mind, pieces of his childhood he had long buried. His father digging behind the mansion. His mother crying in the night. The three boys, Thomas, Jacob, and Max, helping plant a special tree when they were children. And his father's voice saying, "Every family needs roots." Isaac stumbled back, realization hitting him like ice. They hadn't planted a tree that day. They had buried something, someone. And now, whatever it was, wanted them all back. Outside, lightning split the sky, illuminating the oak for a brief second. Isaac saw it clearly then, faces forming in the bark, twisted and screaming, their mouths open in silent agony. And in the center, his own reflection stared back at him. The night was quiet after Max vanished, too quiet. The storm had passed, leaving only the soft dripping of rain from the eaves of the mansion. The silence felt heavy, pressing down on Isaac's chest like a weight. He sat in the corner of the living room, shivering, his mind replaying Max's final scream again and again. The carvings on the tree glowed faintly through the fog outside. Thomas, Jacob, Max, each name burned into the wood like a scar. And Isaac knew deep down his name would be next. He had to know why. He had to know what they had buried. With trembling hands, he grabbed a lantern from the shelf and lit it. The flame flickered, painting long shadows across the cracked wallpaper. He moved through the mansion, every floorboard creaking under his feet, until he reached the back door. The smell of wet earth filled the air. The tree loomed in the distance, its branches still swaying gently, as if breathing. Isaac's boots sank into the soft mud as he approached it. The ground was uneven, torn, and disturbed, as though something had crawled just beneath the surface. He knelt near the roots, the lantern light shaking in his hand. His voice was barely a whisper. "What are you?" No answer came, just a faint rustling sound beneath the soil. Isaac picked up a shovel leaning against the fence. His father used to keep it there when they were children. He pressed the metal blade into the earth and began to dig. The wet dirt was heavy and cold, sticking to his hands and clothes. With each scoop, the air around him seemed to grow thicker, darker. After a few minutes, the shovel hit something solid. Clink. Isaac froze. He brushed away the dirt with his fingers, revealing a small wooden box, blackened with age. His heart pounded as he pulled it free and set it on the ground. The box was carved with strange, circular symbols, the same ones that had appeared on the mansion walls when Jacob opened the ritual book. Isaac hesitated. Every instinct screamed at him not to open it, but he had to know. He lifted the lid. Inside was a small, shriveled object like a heart, but black as ash. It pulsed faintly, as though still alive. The smell was unbearable, a mix of rot and burnt wood. And then, as soon as he looked at it, the whispers returned. "Isaac, you remember us. You planted us here." Isaac stumbled back, shaking his head. "No, that's not true." But his memories betrayed him. He could see it, the day long ago when his father had made them stand by the hole. The three boys and their mother watching from the window, pale and trembling. His father holding a small bundle wrapped in white cloth. A baby's cry. Then silence. Then the sound of dirt falling. Isaac's breath caught. His knees buckled. Oh God. The whispers grew louder, angrier now, echoing through the trees and soil. "You buried us. Now we take root." The lantern flickered violently and went out. Darkness swallowed him. Isaac fumbled for a match, his hands shaking uncontrollably. When he finally lit one, the faint glow illuminated something horrifying, roots rising from the soil, wrapping around the wooden box, crawling toward him like fingers. He screamed and dropped the lantern, stumbling backward. The roots shot out of the ground, slithering around his ankles. He tried to pull free, but they tightened, dragging him toward the open pit. "Let me go," he shouted, slamming the shovel into the roots. The blade cut through one, spraying black sap like blood. The whispering turned to screams. He hacked at them again and again until they loosened. Then he ran, sprinting back toward the mansion, mud flying from his boots, lungs burning. The doors slammed shut behind him. His chest heaved as he locked it and fell to the floor. But the whispers followed him inside, seeping through the walls. You can't run from your roots, Isaac. You made us. You fed us. You are one of us. Isaac clutched his head, screaming, "Stop! Stop it!" Suddenly, he saw movement by the staircase. A figure stood in the shadows, a man, tall and still. For a moment, Isaac thought it was Thomas, his eldest brother. "Thomas," he whispered. The man stepped forward. His face was pale, his eyes dark and hollow. It was Thomas, or what was left of him. His clothes were torn, and his skin was covered in soil. "You shouldn't have dug it up," Thomas said in a low, broken voice. Isaac's eyes filled with tears. "Thomas, what happened to you?" Thomas took another step closer. "Father made us bury it. Said it would protect the family. But it was never protection, Isaac. It was a curse." "The baby," Isaac stammered. "It wasn't a tree we planted, was it?" Thomas shook his head slowly. "It was her. Our sister. The one Mother lost. Father couldn't let her go. He used the book. The ritual. He planted her beneath the oak so her spirit would guard the family forever." Isaac's blood ran cold. "Then why is she killing us?" Thomas's voice cracked, his face twisted in sorrow. "Because we forgot her. Because we let the roots feed on us." The walls began to groan. The ground beneath them shook. Dust fell from the ceiling as roots pushed through the floorboards, splitting the wood. Thomas looked around in panic. "It's too late. She's awake." The roots shot upward, wrapping around his legs. Thomas didn't even scream this time. He just looked at Isaac and whispered, "Run." Isaac tried to grab him, but the roots dragged Thomas into the floor, swallowing him whole. The wood closed over like it had never been broken. Isaac fell to his knees, gasping for breath. His brother was gone again. He looked toward the window. The tree outside glowed brighter than ever. New letters carved themselves across its trunk. "Thomas." The last light in the house flickered and went out. In the darkness, a single voice echoed, high, soft, almost like a child's. "Only one left." Isaac's heart stopped. He turned toward the sound. From the corner of the room, a small, pale figure stepped out, a little girl covered in dirt, her eyes glowing faint white. She smiled gently. "Hello, brother," she said. And the lantern flame went out. Isaac woke up lying on the cold wooden floor. His body ached, his head pounding. The air smelled of damp soil and old wood. For a few moments, he didn't remember where he was until he opened his eyes and saw the faintly glowing carvings on the wall. Thomas, Jacob, Max. His chest tightened. Then he noticed something else. Right beneath those names, a new one slowly forming in the wood, letter by letter. "Isaac." "No," he whispered, shaking his head. "No, no, not me." He pushed himself to his feet, the floorboards groaning under his weight. The house was utterly silent, the kind of silence that felt wrong, like the world was holding its breath. The lantern was gone, the windows were fogged, and the front door was wide open. Rain misted through the air outside. The old oak tree stood in the distance, its branches spread wide like arms waiting to embrace him. And standing beneath it was the little girl. She wore a white dress, torn and stained with soil. Her bare feet were covered in mud, her dark hair falling over her face. But what froze Isaac's blood was her smile, calm, almost kind, as if she had been waiting for him. He took a shaky step forward. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice breaking. The girl tilted her head. "Don't you know, brother?" Isaac's lips trembled. "You're her. The baby." She nodded. "You buried me. But you didn't mean to." "I know." Isaac's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't know what Father did. I swear I didn't." "I know," the girl said again, her voice soft but echoing in his head. "But now the roots are hungry." Isaac stepped back. "You don't have to do this. I can help you rest. I can." Before he could finish, the ground shook violently. Cracks split the earth, and thick roots burst from the soil, twisting like snakes. The mansion behind him began to tremble, its windows shattering one by one. The girl's eyes turned white. "You can't stop it now." Isaac turned and ran toward the mansion. The hallway warped around him, the floorboards bending under invisible pressure. The walls bled dark sap that smelled like rot. Every door he passed slammed shut behind him. He sprinted toward the study, the same room where Jacob had found the old ritual book. The shelves were overturned, pages scattered like dead leaves. He dropped to his knees and clawed through the mess, searching desperately. When he finally found the book, it was still warm to the touch, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. He flipped it open, scanning the ancient, faded text. His eyes stopped on one line, written in their father's handwriting. The seed binds through blood. The curse breaks through fire. Isaac looked up. Fire. It had to be burned. He stumbled toward the fireplace and threw the book inside. His shaking hands searched for matches. There were none. But the lantern. He remembered dropping it outside near the porch. He ran back toward the open door. The wind howled now, and the tree's branches whipped violently. Roots crawled across the porch, splitting the wood. The little girl stood by the tree still, watching him with wide, empty eyes. "Don't do this," Isaac pleaded. "Let me end it." Her smile vanished. "You already did." Suddenly, roots shot from the ground, wrapping around his legs and waist. He screamed, falling hard onto the muddy floor. The cold seeped through his skin. He reached for the lantern lying nearby and smashed it against the porch, spilling oil everywhere. The roots tightened, dragging him backward toward the tree. "You can't stop the roots," the girl said, her voice echoing through the wind. Isaac struck his match against the porch post. It flared to life, one small flame in the darkness. "I can burn them," he whispered. He dropped it. The fire spread instantly, racing along the spilled oil, catching the wooden boards and dry vines. The flames roared to life, climbing the roots, spreading across the ground, reaching for the tree. The girl screamed a high, piercing cry that shattered the night. The tree's branches thrashed wildly, the glowing names on its trunk beginning to fade. Isaac tried to pull himself free, but the roots clung to him tighter. "You have to let go," he shouted. "Let us go." The girl looked at him through the fire, her face flickering between child and corpse. "If I let go," she whispered, "I go alone." Isaac's heart broke. "Then take me with you." For a moment, everything went still. The fire slowed. The air held its breath. The roots loosened slightly, curling around him like arms instead of chains. The girl stepped closer, flames swirling around her but not touching her. "Will you stay with me, brother?" Isaac nodded, tears streaming down his face. "Yes." She reached out her hand. He took it. The ground split open beneath them, and fire poured down into the pit. The roots burned, the air filled with smoke and ash. The mansion's windows exploded outward as the flames spread through the foundation. From the forest, the entire estate looked like a torch, a column of orange light against the black sky. And then silence. Only ashes. Only smoke. Days later, when the fire finally died, investigators found the ruins of the mansion. There were no bodies, only a blackened tree in the middle of the burned earth. Its trunk was hollow and split down the center. But if you stood close enough, you could still see faint letters burned into the wood. Thomas, Jacob, Max, and one final word beneath them half-burned, almost erased by the fire. Isaac. When the wind blew through the branches, some swore they could still hear a voice faint, almost kind, whispering through the leaves. "Thank you, brother." Then the forest fell silent again, and the whispering tree was finally still. The fire has turned the mansion into ashes, but evil never truly dies. As the smoke clears, something moves beneath the blackened soil. The roots still whisper, waiting for the next voice to answer. Don't miss what comes next. Subscribe now and stay with the story, because the whispering never stops.